And this is what we see as the most powerful, the people. We, the people. Most powerful, the sovereign, the source of all power. We are endowed with our inalienable right to contract, to create, and we're protected. Those rights are protected by the Constitution. They protect our rights to liberty, life, the pursuit of happiness, the pursuit of private property, among many other rights and titles that we have. The state citizen, we feel, is second in power due to the fact that the citizenship is a pledge to a trust in exchange for benefits and privileges. And there's also a trusteeship that is involved, whereby you are trustee and beneficiary, and in some places grantor as well, which is all legitimate in trust law. They are second in power, and they represent the sovereignty of the people by pledge. So when the state citizen steps up for the state, well, we understand that the state has been granted certain powers by its state citizens. So that, and certain powers, meaning not all powers, because all other powers remain in the sovereignty and the power of the people. We went over that already. Up above or below, however you see it, is the United States, less powerful than the states and deriving its power from the states, meaning we see the succession of power and where it has been given to the trustees of the United States. Now, a trustee has the ability to do what it feels necessary for the benefit of the trust, as long as it is within the scope of its declaration and constitution. Well, I believe that some of us beneficiaries have a right to call our trustee on his actions under breach of trust by way of violating certain forms of the Constitution. And, that comes to court all the time. So that's just, a basic breach of trust by the trustee that the beneficiary has a right to call them on and has a right to even claim that there be a new trustee in place. We'll get into that a little bit. The citizen of the United States. No true constitutional rights derives its power from the United States. Well, that makes a fair amount of sense. So the constitutional rights are there to protect the several states, the union of states. So, very interesting, very interesting.
The constitutional rights are for the state citizen, not for the citizen of the United States.
That's correct.
This is this stuff is really well covered in both of the extra reading material. I think we didn't get the second one up on this slide, but you got the first one there. Greatest Story Never Told by Albert Lynn Barcroft. Not primary reading for this webinar tonight, but I highly suggest that you read it if you're interested in the subject and want to know more. That's a good read. And also the other one on there, Cooperative Federalism, was added today, I believe, is another great read on this subject. And those are, I don't know, they're each about 40 pages, I think, but really, really good description of this and citations of the source material as well. The Cooperative Federalism book is written by a law professor, but in total layman language, so it's a great place to dig in for this information. The one thing I want to point out of this hierarchy of powers before we move on to the next slide is that it's really a limitation of powers that takes place. Okay, so as you start, you could actually go above the people and say there's spirit or God or primordial energy or whatever. As it passes down through this chart of persons, okay, you got the people. The people make the state citizens. The state citizens make the state by grant. The state makes the United States by grant. The United States makes the citizen of the United States by grant. Okay, in each case, there is a limitation of powers and a grant of powers, and the only one that's got all the power is the people, and that's that's the truth of the way things really lie. So, which would you rather be? Would you rather be a state citizen or a United States citizen, a U.S. citizen? You can see it's just a filter process. The state citizen granted powers to the state, which granted to the United States, which granted citizens of the United States. Confusing at first, but very important.
And you know, it's an interesting thing that you say that. The private express trust often, if was looking for protection, falls under the category of state citizen and is protected by
let's go to the next slide before you get into that. It actually falls under more than that.
It does. It does. There we are.
No, okay. Take out the bullet. Thank you. Actually, we have a poll for this. There we go.
Oh, we do. That's great.
Where does a private express trust under the common law fit into the hierarchy of powers? What is it equal to, in other words? Can we see results? Can we see results?
Ready.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, people are getting that the powers in the people. The answer is sort of it's sort of a trick question, to be honest. The United States is a private express trust under the common law. The state is a private express trust under the common law. The citizen is a natural person. The people are natural persons. I would say all of those are true. The only one that's not true, that it's not equal to, is the U.S. citizen. The U.S. citizen is the runt of the litter of this group. So, yeah, I mean, it depends on how you define people. If you're defining people as a portion of God, then this trust is not truly that. Okay, it is an entity that's created by people. So I would put it right around the power of the state citizen. But it also is true that it is equal to or above the United States and the state. So when the United States sues your trust, for example, assuming jurisdiction, your answer in court is a 12b1 motion to dismiss for lack of jurisdiction. And unless they can prove that your trust is in their jurisdiction, there's no case, period. It doesn't go any further. You don't even have to answer the complaint. You just put in a 12b1 motion and set a motion date on your own time, and that motion must be heard. And unless they can prove minimum contacts, which is the we're gonna get into that. I mean, minimum contacts becomes key, but unless they can prove minimum contacts in their jurisdiction, then there is no case.
That's correct. That's very good. All right, so I'm assuming we got our results correct.
Yeah, you saw it, didn't you? It was like 58% said the people. It was.
Believe it or not, when I have this up, I can't see other items. So,
weird.
Well, we're showing screen right now. That's why. So.
Well, everyone else sees that, though, right? Okay. The trust is a natural person that can sue and be sued, and possesses the right to all enjoyments from any contract it enters into.
It's very clear. The trust is governed by its indenture, just as the United States is governed by its indenture or the Constitution. So we're seeing some definite similarities in the balance of power that exists in the private express trust versus the power that exists in the United States trust. Very interesting. One who creates a trust may mold it into whatever form he pleases, and whatever one may lawfully do himself, he may authorize another to do for him. Now, that's very clear and present. What that dictates is just like it says. One who creates a trust can have any intention he pleases. And whatever they can do for themselves, they can enact into articles and bylaws that will allow the trustee to act on their behalf. Doing so requires no benefit, privilege, or franchise from any government or other outside party. Now, some of these have the citing on the base. I believe it was the last one the last two that were actually cited from those. Those sightings actually came from Weiss's as well, and so did some of those statements, although they were actually cited from the case themselves. We do suggest, and that is some of the reading material for the next webinar, is Weiss's Concise Trustee Handbook. That's a very powerful document.
Before you go on here, let's just talk about this for a second,
Yeah.
because I know that a lot of people on this call know about benefits, privileges of franchise for any government. They know what that means. There's a very important distinction between rights and benefits and privileges. And the state citizen is endowed with rights. Okay, the state citizen is a natural person with unalienable rights. The United States citizen is a fiction and is given benefits and privileges instead of rights. It's like the Wizard of Oz. They get a badge of courage instead of actual courage. The federal jurisdiction, the federal government, is a fiction all the way through. The citizen that's created and that ostensibly gave the slaves a way to operate became the problem. And we opt into it by our parents filling out a birth certificate, by our application to a Social Security card to get a Social Security account, by the use of that Social Security number every time we use it. We're raising our hands and saying, yes, we want to be United States citizens. Keep treating me like a fiction. Keep treating me like I'm the all capital letters spelling of my name that goes on the driver's license that I don't really need because the Constitution allows for the right to travel. Well, I have an unalienable God-given right to travel, and the Constitution limits the powers of the government, not allowing them to restrict my travel. So I have unlimited right to travel on the roadways of America, and yet the states, so does the state citizen, that's me, but the United States citizen needs a driver's license because that's a benefit. That's a privilege. It's not a right for the United States citizen. So we're used to operating in an environment where all of our rights have been taken away, and instead we have liberty. And liberty is a nautical term. It has to do with shore leave. Liberty is when you are free, but only until someone jerks your leash back to the boat, and then you're under the iron rule of the captain again. Okay, so liberty means you are as free as we want you to be. Freedom is freedom. Liberty is temporary freedom, or freedom with restrictions. And so we want to get out of the realm of liberty, benefits, and privileges. Stop being a franchise of the government, which is what the U.S. citizen is, and operate from a higher position in the hierarchy of powers.
I just wanted to quote something out of Weiss's Concise that talks a little bit about the natural person. We're talking about here the Declaration, and we're getting close to the edge here, so I'm just going to read this out. Moreover, the Declaration, also known as the Constitution in this moment, by its terms and provisions, serves to establish the entire contractual arrangement, including the identities and positions of the parties, the trust's name, jurisdiction, and situs, and all particulars of administration, all of which the courts of equity will fully support by the principle that equity compels performance. The ultimate result is the creation of a bona fide legal entity with its own separate and distinct juridical personality, with standing to sue and be sued, as we covered, and to function as a person, which we'll look up in a moment, in commerce by and through its trustees, meaning it is a natural person in commerce by and through its trustees. The term natural person has been applied to express trusts by courts of equity because of its administration being carried out by men acting as natural persons. And we're going to get into a little more of that and the natural person, and of course the definition of persona, mostly into the second webinars where we're going to be getting into a lot of that. We could cover the definition of person right now. I do have it up on etymology if we wanted.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do cover person, because it's a tricky word that some people on this call have got down. Others may not even know that it is what it is.
Yeah. And I believe that is the one that I'm missing out on Black's Law, but I can look it up pretty quickly. So this is our etymology. This is Etym Online, like we spoke of. Early 13th century, it was known as human being. And you can see it start to change slowly throughout time. Originally, character in a drama mask, possibly borrowed from Etruscan Furcia, mask. This may be related to Greek Persephone. The use of person to replace man in compounds and avoid alleged sexist connotations is first recorded in 1971. So in person, or by bodily presence, is from the 1560s. So there's a different term for person all throughout time. Now, with Black's Law Fourth, we're oftentimes around the beginning of the 19th century, the beginning of the 20th century, end of the 19th century, around 1890 to 1905. There's also a definition underneath person that covers persona, an outward or social personality. Jungian psychology term from person, used earlier in the sense of literary character representing the voice of the author. Now, we'll be covering that a little more throughout Weiss's in a couple of weeks in this next webinar, because there's a beautiful piece that describes the theater, the persona, the mask, and the person, and how they all connect to each other. And we do suggest that you read that as some of your, that is homework and reading material for the next webinar as well. So we hope that you'll be up to date on that when we talk about it.
Isn't it interesting how, leave it there for a moment. See how you mentioned that the sexist connotations were avoided by in 1971, people started calling person instead of man. What's interesting is that man is people. Man is human, right? And so is woman, but person is not. Person, at least, is not necessarily. Man is always man, but person is bringing a level of fiction, a mask, okay, a persona to the situation. The Bank of America is a person. The United States is a person. I'm a person too, but I'm a different kind of person. I'm a natural person, okay? And more importantly, I'm one of the people. I'm a man. So this dangerous slip is very similar to, trying to do the right thing. You see how this legislation goes through, or this trend goes ahead. Legislation I'm talking about is freeing the slaves and giving them a citizenship. It sounds like a great idea. Let's give them equality, but it didn't. And here, when the feminist movement started to really take hold and people realized that, man is sexist potentially, then person was the word that unfortunately started being used. And what it did was it stripped men and women from being referred to as people, and instead started referring to you as a fiction, just like the 14th Amendment citizen. It strengthened the 14th Amendment citizenship clause so much, and it's unfortunate.